It was a random Tuesday when everything started to unravel. I wasn't looking for trouble. I wasn't digging for secrets. I was simply going through my email half asleep, when a subject line caught my eye. Your new loan statement is ready. Blink. Loan. I hadn't applied for any loan. I clicked it out of curiosity, assuming it was spam, until I saw the header. Bank of East Ridge personal loan, $250,000. Froze. My stomach dropped. The account was in my name. My full name. My current address. Even my social security number. I refreshed the page, thinking maybe it was some kind of phishing scam. But then another notification came through. This one from a credit monitoring app one had installed months ago and forgotten about. Alert. A hard inquiry has been made on your credit. Logged in. My credit score had nosedived. And there, plain as day, was the inquiry, same bank, same amount, same date. I sat there in stunned silence. Was someone using my identity? Called the bank. After a grueling wait filled with terrible hold music and stomach-churning anxiety, I finally got through. Can you verify the last 4 digits of your SSN? The rep asked. I did. He hesitated. According to our system, you've already been verified. And the loan has been approved. Funds were disbursed 2 days ago. What? I almost shouted. Disbursed to where? Who signed off on this? There was a pause. He rattled off a joint account. My name. And my parents' names. The room spun. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just sat there in stunned, suffocating silence as a wave of clarity washed over me. They used me. They used my name. My credit. My future. And they hadn't told me. Hadn't asked. Hadn't warned. They just done it like I was some kind of safety net they had always planned to cash in. For the first time in my life, I realized something terrifying. I didn't just grow up under their roof. I grew up as their backup plan. I drove straight to their house. Didn't bother to call. Didn't text. I didn't trust myself to write anything that wouldn't come out in fire. They were in the kitchen, sipping tea like it was just another evening. My dad glanced up from his mug, casually saying, "Hey, honey," like he hadn't just detonated a bomb inside my life. I dropped the printed bank email on the counter. "What is this?" asked, voice calm, too calm. The kind of calm that comes before an earthquake. My mom looked at the paper. Didn't flinch. Just gave that dismissive shrug she always gave when I questioned things. "Oh, that. You weren't supposed to see that." Not sorry. Not let me explain. Just, you weren't supposed to see it. My dad chimed in with the casual arrogance of someone who believed they still had control. "It's nothing to worry about. We needed a little help, and your credit is excellent. You took out $250,000 in my name," I said, trembling. "Without telling me. That's not help. That's fraud." Mom waved her hand like she was swatting a fly. "We raised you, didn't we? Fed you, put you through school. We figured it was time you helped the family back." Help the family back. My mouth fell open. "You think I owe you $250,000 because you... What raised me?" "You're overreacting," my dad muttered. "You're acting like we stole from you. We didn't take anything that doesn't belong to us. That loan doesn't belong to you," he yelled. "My name is on that contract. My credit. My future. If you miss a single payment, I'm the one ruined." They looked at each other. And then my mom said the words that broke something in me. "Well, you kind of do owe us that much anyway." Silence. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't believe it. All those years of them holding their sacrifices over my head. All the guilt trips about everything they gave up for me. This was never about love. It was about leverage. They didn't raise a daughter. They raised a lifeline, a name they could use when the walls closed in. And in that moment, something in me snapped into place. Not out of fear, not out of rage, but resolve. "Okay," I said quietly, nodding like I understood. Then I turned, walked out the door, and started planning exactly how I'd shut them out before the bank came calling. That night I didn't sleep. Not because I was crying. Those tears had dried long ago. But because my mind was spinning, memories kept flooding back. Every moment I had brushed off before. Every backhanded comment. Every time they'd used guilt as currency. After everything we did for you. We gave up our dreams so you could chase yours. You don't know how hard it was to raise you. Growing up, I thought that was just how parents talked. But now it all sounded different. It sounded like interest on a debt I never agreed to. By morning, the text messages started. From Mom. We didn't want you to find out like that. But now that you have, let's not make this bigger than it is. From Dad. We've always supported you. All we ask is that you support us now. Family doesn't walk away. Then came the calls. When I didn't pick up, they left voicemails. Manipulative. Calculated. Cruel. Mom's voice, soft and pitiful. If we go to jail, just know it'll be because our daughter turned her back on us. Dad's voice, sharper. We co-signed everything in good faith. This is still your responsibility too. You're not a child anymore. And then came the worst one. My mother again, whispering through tears. You don't know what it's like to sacrifice everything. You wouldn't have made it through college without us. Don't act like we haven't earned this. Earned. That word kept ringing in my ears. They thought they'd earned the right to sell off my future. To saddle me with debt. To break the law under the name of love. But this wasn't love. Love doesn't hide loan documents. Love doesn't cash in your name behind your back. Love doesn't manipulate your silence through shame. That day, I realized something heartbreaking but necessary. They didn't see me as a daughter. They saw me as a resource. And for the first time in my life, I stopped feeling guilty about protecting myself from them. They had crossed a line, quietly, deliberately, and now they were trying to trap me on the wrong side of it. But I wasn't the scared little girl who used to beg for approval anymore. I was a woman who had just found out what she was really worth. And I wasn't for sale. As the initial shock wore off, I started piecing things together. And it was like watching a dam break in slow motion. The signs had always been there. I had just been too conditioned to question them. There was the time in college when my financial aid was accidentally sent to my parents' account, and they said they used it to cover some home bills. They promised to pay it back. They never did. Or the birthday when I got a handwritten card and a lecture instead of the promised laptop. You don't need gifts. You owe us gratitude. I bought the laptop myself with a student credit card. One they co-signed. Even my first job out of grad school. The offer letter came with a request. Just deposit your paycheck in our account. We'll manage it for you until you're more mature with money. I did. For months. 'Cause I thought they knew better. Because they always made me feel like I didn't earn what I had without them. They kept receipts. Not literal ones but emotional ones. Any success I had, they'd smile and say, "We built that. We paid for that. Don't forget who helped you get here." I didn't realize it then, but I was being financially groomed. Taught to feel guilty for having anything of my own. Taught to second-guess my right to independence. Taught that every step forward was rented, not owned. They'd whisper it in so many ways. We didn't raise a selfish child. You're not one of those people who puts money above family, right? Other kids take care of their parents. Why are you so focused on yourself? Thought that was normal. Thought that was love. It wasn't. It was control. And I had handed them the keys to my finances because they convinced me I couldn't be trusted with them. Now I saw it for what it was. They had trained me to be the emergency fund, the human savings account, and that $250,000 loan. It wasn't an accident. It was a withdrawal they always planned to make. But this time the account had teeth. And I was finally ready to bite back. A few days later, I met up with my friend Janelle. She's the kind of woman who doesn't sugarcoat a damn thing. We'd been close since our early 20s, through bad jobs, worse relationships, and every family drama you could imagine. I hadn't told her the full story yet, just that something was going on with my parents and money. We were sitting at a little cafe downtown. I hadn't even taken a sip of my latte before she leaned across the table and said, "Girl, you look like you're 5 minutes from burning something down." I laughed. A dry, exhausted kind of laugh. Then I told her. Everything. The email. The bank call. The confrontation. The gaslighting. The guilt. And how, somehow, my parents still thought I'd just accept it. Janelle didn't blink. She stared at me for a moment, then said, "You need to shut it down." Her voice was low, sharp. "I don't care if they're your parents. That's identity theft. That's criminal. You can't let them drag you under because they raised you." Shrugged. "It's not that easy. It's complicated." "No, it's not," she snapped. "They used you. And now they're betting that you'll roll over because you're too scared to fight back." She pulled out her phone. Started Googling things right there on the spot. "First thing, you check your credit report. Like today. Get the full list of every account and every hard inquiry they've made. You might find more than that one loan." Then she looked up, her voice softer now. "Second, you need to talk to a lawyer. Or at least someone who can tell you what your options are. You can't fix this by just hoping they'll pay it back." I didn't want to hear it. But I needed to. Janelle wasn't judging. She was reminding me of something I'd forgotten in the chaos. I had a right to protect myself. No matter who the threat was. Even if it came from the people who once tucked me in at night. That night I pulled my laptop into bed and opened my credit report. There it was. The $250,000 loan. And 2 smaller credit cards I never opened. Both maxed out. Both months old. I sat in the dark staring at the screen. Heart racing. Hands shaking. But this time I didn't freeze. I opened a new tab. Typed in, "How to freeze your credit immediately." Because Janelle was right. They may have raised me. But I wasn't going to let them ruin me. I didn't sleep that night. Not even a little. I kept staring at the screen. My credit report open in one tab, a blank document in another where I started taking notes like I was building a case file. Because that's what it felt like now. Crime scene. And the culprits. My own parents. The $250,000 personal loan wasn't the only scar. As I dug deeper, I found a department store card opened under my name, maxed out at $5,000. A gas card with a balance I hadn't touched, dating back 9 months. A second inquiry from a lender I didn't even recognize. Declined, but still there, dragging my score down. I sat back, breath shallow. This wasn't a one-time desperate decision. This was a pattern. They had been building this behind my back. Slowly, intentionally. Like they were carving out my future without asking if I wanted any part of it. It wasn't even clever. Same mailing address. Same phone number. They hadn't tried to cover their tracks. Because they never thought I'd look. They thought I'd just keep trusting them. Or worse. They thought I'd never feel entitled to question them. I screenshot everything. Every balance. Every date. Every account ID. I called the bank's fraud department and sat on hold for 40 minutes, hand clenching and unclenching the phone. When a rep finally answered, I forced my voice to stay steady. "My identity has been used without my consent. I need to begin the process of freezing all accounts tied to my name and flagging fraudulent activity." The rep asked a series of questions. I answered all of them. Then came the last one. "Do you know who may have committed the fraud?" Pause. My lips almost couldn't say it. But I did. Yes. It was my parents. The line was silent for a beat. Then she cleared her throat and calmly replied, "We'll send you the documents you'll need to begin a formal dispute. Do you have a police report?" Not yet, I thought. Soon. When the call ended, I sat there in the dark, laptop glowing in my lap, the silence around me thicker than ever before. But inside me, something had shifted. This wasn't just about money. This was about power. And for the first time I was about to take mine back. The next morning, I walked into my parents' house with 2 cups of coffee and a soft smile like nothing had happened. They didn't suspect a thing. My mom was in the kitchen scrolling through her phone. My dad was on the couch, acting like the man who still ran everything. I handed them their drinks and sat at the dining table like a dutiful daughter. Inside was ice. Because what they didn't know was that every financial pipeline they had tied to me was now cut off. My credit, frozen. Bank alerts, activated. Fraud claims, in process. I had also opened a new personal checking account at a completely different bank and transferred all my savings there. Every trace of joint access gone. But I didn't say a word yet. I wanted them to relax, to think I'd rolled over again. Because while they sipped their drinks and smiled in smug silence, I was watching their faces like a surgeon watching a heartbeat monitor before making the first cut. "You've been quiet lately," my mom finally said. "Just processing everything," I replied calmly. "You're right. Maybe I do owe you a lot." My dad nodded like a king blessing a subject. That's the mature way to look at it. They had no idea I was already undoing everything they tried to steal. I knew the bank would be contacting them soon. I'd filed my identity theft affidavit. The investigator said they'd freeze the loan account pending review. And when that happened, they would no longer have access to the funds. They were about to be exposed. Not to me, but to a system they couldn't manipulate. I didn't want to scream or shame them. I wanted something cleaner, quieter, more final. They thought they'd taken my future. But I just changed the locks on theirs. Before I left that day, I hugged my mother and whispered, "I'm learning a lot about responsibility lately." She smiled. Too bad she didn't ask whose. It happened 2 days later. Around 10:17 a.m. my phone buzzed. Not from the bank this time, but from my mom. I didn't answer. She left no voicemail. Then my dad called. 3 times in a row. The 4th time I picked up calm, controlled. "What's going on?" I asked, pretending like it was just another Thursday. His voice was furious, strained like someone who had just watched their house of cards collapse. "Why is the bank calling us saying the account is under review? They're threatening to reverse the loan, freeze the funds. What the hell did you do?" I said nothing for a moment. Then I took a slow breath and replied, "I told them the truth." Silence. "You told them we committed fraud," he shouted. "No," I said coolly. "I told them I didn't authorize anything." Which is true. If that's fraud, then maybe you should take a good hard look at yourselves. In the background, I could hear my mother wailing. "This is your family," she screamed. "Do you have any idea what you've done? They're going to call the authorities. We could lose the house. You should have thought of that before stealing my identity." And just like that, the room on their end went dead. The line stayed open. But they didn't speak. Maybe for the first time in their lives. They realized I wasn't bluffing. That the daughter they once guilted into silence wasn't silent anymore. And they didn't know how to handle that. They sputtered a few more lines. Pleading, threatening, bargaining. "You'll ruin us. What will the neighbors say? We were just trying to survive. We thought you'd understand. We're your parents." And finally, from my mother, broken and breathless. "So that's it. You're just going to destroy us." I closed my eyes, steadied my breath, and replied with a voice I didn't recognize as my own. "No, you did that yourselves. I'm just making sure you don't destroy me too." Then I hung up. And I didn't cry. Not this time. Because finally, they weren't holding the pen to write my story anymore. It was. After that call, the fallout hit like a storm I'd been bracing for all my life. I woke up the next morning to dozens of texts. Not from my parents, but from cousins, aunts, even my godmother. "How could you do this to your own mom and dad? They said you reported them to the bank. You've always been difficult, but this is disgusting. We all make sacrifices. They did what they had to do. You'll understand when you're a parent." Apparently, my parents were fast to spin the story. They didn't say they stole my identity. Well, they said I was ungrateful. That I blew up a misunderstanding and tried to destroy them over a little paperwork issue. And just like that, some of my own flesh and blood believed them. 'Cause, of course, parents are always right. Right. Except they weren't. Not this time. And I didn't have the energy to defend myself in a group chat full of people who never called when I got promoted, never showed up when I needed help, but suddenly had time to lecture me now. I stayed quiet, but not passive. Behind the scenes, the bank's fraud investigation was moving quickly. I'd submitted notarized statements, copies of my ID, my credit report, and even proof of my parents' joint account details that received the loan. The rep assigned to my case said, off the record, "This is a clear-cut case. You're not liable for this debt." I was relieved. But I wasn't naive. This wasn't just about the money anymore. This was about reputation, family, pride. My parents were livid. Their image, the one they'd carefully crafted for years, was cracking. And they wanted me to feel the shame of it. They wanted me to cave. But I didn't. Not when I saw my mom post a passive-aggressive quote on Facebook. Some children forget who paid for their wings when they finally learn to fly. And definitely not when my dad sent me an email with nothing but the subject line, "You'll regret this." No, I wouldn't. Because for once in my life I was choosing myself. Not out of vengeance. Not out of spite. But because they taught me what sacrifice looks like. And I was done being the only one making it. A week after everything exploded, the cracks in the family weren't just showing, they were splitting open. Some of my relatives finally started reaching out with more open minds. My Aunt Deborah, who had always been the quiet one at family dinners, called me in secret. Her voice was hushed, like she was hiding in her laundry room. "I'm not saying what they did is right, Susan. But I believe you. I've seen how they treat you." That one sentence felt like a lifeline. She told me stories, ones I hadn't heard before. How my parents had once borrowed money from her in the name of paying my school fees, but never returned a cent. How they'd pressured another cousin to co-sign something years ago but backed off when he pushed back harder than I ever did. I realized then this wasn't the first time. It was just the first time someone refused to let it go unchecked. Soon more whispers started surfacing. My cousin Mark DM'd me on Instagram. "Heard what happened. They tried to rope me into something weird a few years back too. Glad you're standing your ground." One by one, people were pulling away from the narrative my parents tried so hard to control. Of course, others stayed loyal to the lie. Few uncles blocked me. My older cousin, who still lived in their basement rent-free, made a public post defending them. Some people get too big for their roots and forget who watered them. I didn't engage. Not once. Because I wasn't interested in drama. I was interested in freedom. But the best shift came from my younger sister, Amanda. She hadn't said anything during the fallout. But one night, I got a text that made me stare at my screen for a long, long time. "I'm sorry. I didn't know the whole story. They've been doing this forever. You just had the guts to stop it." My throat tightened. Amanda had always been the golden child. The one they spoiled, maybe even to keep her quiet. And now, even she was waking up. That was the moment I realized. This wasn't just about reclaiming my credit score. This was about breaking a cycle that had been passed down like heirloom guilt. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the villain in this story. I was the first one brave enough to write a different ending. For days I debated it. I had cleared my name with the bank. The fraud team was handling the loan reversal. My credit was frozen. My finances were safe again. By every practical measure, I was okay. But something still festered beneath the surface. A pressure in my chest every time I thought about what could have happened. What if I hadn't checked that email? What if I hadn't frozen my credit? What if the fraud team didn't believe me? They were willing to risk everything. My name, my future, my freedom, and they never even apologized. So I booked a consultation with a lawyer. I didn't tell anyone. Not even Janelle. It was just me, sitting across from a calm, no-nonsense woman in a dark blazer, flipping through my documentation like it was just another Tuesday. She looked up at me halfway through and said, "You have a strong case. This isn't a gray area, Susan. This is felony identity theft and financial fraud. You could press charges." The words hit me like cold water. Felony. Charges. Parents. I swallowed. Would they go to jail? Yes. She didn't sugarcoat it. If prosecuted fully and found guilty. Especially at this amount. That night, I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, asking myself a question I never thought I'd have to ask. Did I want justice? Or peace? Because I knew this much. I couldn't have both. Filing a police report meant crossing a line I could never uncross. But staying silent meant giving them a permanent pass to do this again. Maybe to me, maybe to someone else. So I made a different kind of decision. I didn't press charges. Not yet. But I filed a formal notice of incident with the authorities. A legal record that would sit on file. Quiet boundary with teeth. If they ever tried this again, if they ever so much as opened a library card in my name, I'd escalate it without blinking. This wasn't forgiveness. This was insurance. Because my peace wasn't about letting go. It was about making sure they never had a grip on me again. Weeks passed. The storm had quieted, but it hadn't passed. Not entirely. My parents stopped calling. The extended family stayed split, some in denial, some distant, some silently nodding at me through silence. But then, one afternoon, I received a certified letter in the mail. From them. The envelope was thick, heavy, almost theatrical. I sat at the table, took a deep breath, and opened it. Inside was a 4-page letter from my mother. Typed, not handwritten. That alone told me how much this meant to her. My dad had scrawled something at the end in blue ink, a week. We never meant to hurt you, Dad. But the rest. It was an odd mix of self-pity, revisionist history, and attempts to make things right, on their terms. They acknowledged the loan, but insisted it was never meant to become a problem. They blamed the economy. Courage. Temporary desperation. Then came the kicker. We only did what any loving parents would do in a time of crisis. We thought you'd understand. You always seemed so capable. We assumed you'd be okay. That sentence sat in my chest like a stone. They didn't do it because they thought I'd be okay. They did it because they thought I wouldn't stop them. Near the end of the letter, they offered a solution. They wanted me to sign a document allowing them to continue managing the loan, while keeping my name on it, for technical reasons. They even framed it as a second chance, an opportunity to rebuild trust. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I took the letter, scanned it, and attached it to a reply email to the bank's fraud department and my attorney. Then I wrote just one line back. This confirms continued intent to use my identity without consent. Please keep this on record. I didn't send anything to my parents. I didn't need to. Because the message had already been sent. I wasn't scared of them anymore. I wasn't bending. And I wasn't coming back. The door wasn't just closed. It was locked, with my name carved into the other side. Not as a victim, but as the one who finally said, enough. After months of emotional carnage, legal calls, frozen accounts, and whispered family betrayals, something inside me shifted. For the first time in years, I sat down at my kitchen table. Not to defend myself, not to react, but to plan. Because I wasn't just going to survive this. I was going to rebuild on my terms. I started with my name. I locked my credit files with all 3 bureaus permanently, added fraud alerts, and removed every old address or contact info tied to my parents. Every trace of access they once had. Then I opened a new savings account. Not because I had a ton to put in it, but because that account, with my name on it and no one else's fingerprints, felt like a quiet rebellion. Small, sacred reclamation. I revisited my goals. That apartment I'd always dreamed of, with the reading nook by the window. I toured one the next week. The travel fund I kept postponing because I was always helping them cover emergencies. I started at $50 at a time. I wasn't rich. But I was in control. Emotionally, the recovery was harder. I had to retrain myself not to flinch when someone asked about my family. To stop expecting a guilt trip text every time I felt happy. To unlearn the idea that love meant sacrifice without limits. Therapy helped. So did Janelle. So did the quiet nights where I reminded myself. You didn't ruin them. You protected yourself. And slowly, the anxiety stopped running the show. I started dating again too. Nothing serious, But I finally realized I didn't have to explain or hide what I'd been through. If anything, it made me more awake, to red flags, to manipulation, to my own worth. And when my little sister Amanda texted again weeks later, saying, "I'm proud of you," I didn't think it was allowed to stand up like this. I realized something else. Maybe I wasn't just rebuilding my own life. Maybe I was breaking the cycle for the next one too. Because what I did, it wasn't selfish. It was necessary. And the freedom I felt now, that was something no one could take out in a loan. It happened 6 months later. I was leaving the grocery store, just a normal day, arms full of fruit and a cheap bottle of wine, when I saw them. My parents, standing by their car waiting. My stomach tightened instantly. I hadn't seen them in person since everything came crashing down. My heart pounded against my ribs, but I didn't stop walking. I had no reason to. My mom stepped forward first, looking older, more fragile somehow, but her eyes were the same, calculating. "We need to talk." I didn't respond. My dad followed behind her, arms crossed, mouth pressed into a bitter line. We didn't come to fight. I stood by the edge of the parking lot, groceries digging into my fingers. I tilted my head slightly. "Then why are you here?" My mom looked like she might cry, but I didn't trust her tears anymore. "We just wanted to say we're sorry. We didn't mean to hurt you. Things got out of hand." I stared at her, stone still. This wasn't an apology. It was a performance. Because if they were truly sorry, they wouldn't have spun lies to the family. They wouldn't have tried to trick me again with another contract. They wouldn't have only shown up when their world got quiet. "I'm not interested in closure," I said softly. "I've already given that to myself." My dad shifted uncomfortably. My mom reached out as if to touch my arm, and I stepped back, gently but firmly. "You don't get to do this," I added. "You don't get to pretend this was just a mistake. You built a future with my name. You didn't slip, you stole." My voice didn't crack. My hands didn't shake. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of them. They both looked stunned. My mom opened her mouth, then closed it. My dad finally broke the silence. "You really would have let us go to jail." I stared at him, unblinking. "You were willing to let me go broke. I guess we were both willing to watch something burn." And with that I turned, walked to my car and drove away. I didn't look back. Not because I was angry, but because I was finally free. A year passed. No more unexpected calls. No shady loan attempts. No messages sent through relatives. Just silence. But not the kind that haunted me. The kind that healed me. I still had scars. I still had moments where I'd flinch when my phone buzzed, or when I heard the phrase, "You owe me." I still had dreams where I was stuck, trapped in their house, unable to speak up. But I always woke up knowing that part of my life was over. My credit was restored. My career had grown. I even got promoted and started mentoring new hires, something I never thought I had the confidence to do. And every month I moved a little more money into that travel fund. I booked a solo trip for my birthday, Barcelona. The exact birthday that, years ago, they almost ruined with a loan I never signed up for. Now, that date was mine again. One morning while packing, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. Not physically, I still looked like me. But my posture, my calm, the fire in my eyes. It was someone who had walked through fire and chosen to never go back inside. Before I left, I got a message from Amanda. "Have the best trip. I tell people about you when I talk about strength. Love you." And for the first time, those words didn't make me cry. They made me smile. Because I had fought like hell to get here. To reclaim not just my name or my money, but my voice, my story, my right to say no. And now, with every step forward, every plane ticket, every locked account, and every hard-earned boundary, I wasn't running from the past. I was walking toward a future that no one else owned. Not even the people who gave me life. Because peace, it's not always quiet. But when it's yours, it's the loudest thing in the world.